touch your kitchen cabinets right now. Go ahead. If your hand comes away feeling tacky, almost sticky, like there's a thin film on the wood, that's grease. Not dirt, not dust, grease. And it's been building up for months, maybe years, without you noticing, because it doesn't happen all at once. I've been cleaning professionally since I was 12 years old. My grandfather did this work, my father did this work, and I grew up mixing solutions in 5-gallon buckets before I could reach the top of the counter. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact method I use to strip sticky grease off wood cabinets and wood floors using one ingredient that costs about $2 and is probably already sitting in your kitchen. No harsh chemicals, no damage to your finish, no streaking, just the wood, clean and smooth, the way it's supposed to feel. Stick around, because I'm also going to tell you why most people make this problem worse when they try to fix it. There's a specific mistake almost everyone makes with greasy cabinets, and it's the reason your wood looks duller every year instead of better. Let's talk about what's actually happening on your cabinets and floors, because most people don't realize how bad it gets until they really look. Grease on wood cabinets shows up first around the stove. That's obvious. Every time you fry something, sauté something, even boil pasta with a lid half off, tiny particles of oil get carried up into the air on steam and heat. They don't just disappear, they land on the nearest surface, and in most kitchens, that's the cabinets directly above and beside the stove. Over weeks, those particles build a layer. Over months, that layer thickens. By the time most people notice it, they're not looking at a light film anymore. They're looking at something you can scrape with a fingernail. But here's what surprises people. It's not just the cabinets near the stove. Grease travels. Every time you open your dishwasher and steam rolls out, every time you use your oven, every time you cook with the exhaust fan off because it's loud or you forgot to turn it on, that grease moves through the air of your kitchen and settles everywhere. I've cleaned kitchens where the cabinets on the far wall, 10 feet from the stove, had almost as much buildup as the ones directly above it. People are always shocked by that. On floors, it's a different mechanism, but the same result. Grease drips. It splatters when you're cooking. It gets tracked from the stove area to the rest of the kitchen on your socks or slippers. And if you have wood floors that connect to your kitchen, no wall, no threshold, just open flow, that grease travels with foot traffic into your dining room, your hallway, sometimes your living room. I've seen wood floors 20 feet from the kitchen with a grease haze on them, and the homeowner had no idea it was even grease. They thought their floor cleaner just wasn't working. Here's the part that really gets people. Grease is not like regular dirt. Regular dirt sits on top of a surface. You can usually wipe it off, vacuum it, sweep it away. Grease is different because it's sticky by nature, and sticky surfaces attract more debris. So once you have a layer of grease on your cabinets or floor, it starts pulling in dust, hair, pet dander, even flour or food particles from the air, and all of that gets embedded into the greasy layer. That's why greasy cabinets often look dingy or gray, not just shiny. You're not looking at pure grease anymore. You're looking at grease mixed with months of trapped debris, and that combination is what makes it feel almost impossible to get off with a regular wipe down. And the worst part? Most store-bought cleaners don't cut through it. I'll explain exactly why in a minute, but I want you to understand the scope of the problem first, because once you see it clearly, the solution is going to make a lot more sense. So why does grease stick to wood so stubbornly, and why do regular cleaners fail? It comes down to basic chemistry, and you don't need a science degree to understand it. Grease is oil-based. Water, on its own, is not attracted to oil. That's why when you run water over a greasy pan, the water just beads up and slides off. It doesn't actually break down the grease or lift it away. This is the same reason wiping your cabinets with just a damp cloth and no cleaner barely does anything. You're pushing the grease around, maybe thinning it out a little, but you're not removing it. A lot of people do this for years without realizing they're basically just relocating the grease from one spot to another. Now, wood makes this worse because of its finish. Most kitchen cabinets have a lacquer, polyurethane, or oil-based finish sealing the wood underneath. That finish has a texture to it. Under a microscope, it's not perfectly smooth. It has tiny pores and imperfections, especially as it ages. Grease works its way into those microscopic gaps and grips on. That's why grease on a laminate countertop wipes off in 10 seconds, but grease on a wood cabinet door can sit there for a year and barely budge with normal cleaning. Heat plays a role too. When you're cooking, the heat from your stove doesn't just carry grease particles into the air, it also softens the finish on nearby cabinets slightly, especially older finishes. That softened finish is more porous for a short window of time, which means grease has an even easier time bonding to it. This is why cabinets directly beside the stove often have the worst, most stubborn buildup in the entire kitchen. It's not bad luck, it's physics. Here's where most people go wrong trying to fix it. They reach for an all-purpose spray cleaner, or worse, something like a degreaser made for ovens or engines, and they scrub hard. Two things happen. First, a lot of all-purpose cleaners are not actually formulated to break down oil. They're built for general dirt and grime, which is a different kind of mess entirely. So people scrub and only get partial results. Then they scrub harder, which leads to the second problem: they damage the finish. I've walked into homes where you can see faint scratch marks or dull patches on cabinet doors from people using abrasive sponges or scouring pads, trying to fight through grease that the cleaner wasn't equipped to handle in the first place. Some people go the other direction and use straight vinegar, full strength, because they heard it's a natural degreaser. Vinegar is acidic, and while it does cut grease to some degree, using it undiluted on wood finish over time can dull the shine, and on some finishes actually eat into the coating. I've seen cabinets with a slightly cloudy, worn look from months of straight vinegar wiping. It's not dramatic damage, but it adds up. The truth is, you don't need something harsh. You need something that's specifically good at breaking the bond between oil and surface without being aggressive enough to hurt the finish underneath. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. The ingredient I use, and the one my family has used for 3 generations, is plain dish soap. Not a specialty product, not something with a brand name that costs $15 a bottle. A basic bottle of dish soap, the kind that costs around $2, works better on grease than almost anything else you can buy. And here's why. Dish soap is built specifically to break down grease. That's its entire job. It's designed to cut through oil on your dishes so it rinses away instead of sitting there. The molecules in dish soap have 2 ends. One end attaches to grease, the other attaches to water. When you mix it into water and apply it, it surrounds the grease particles, lifts them off the surface, and lets the water carry them away. This is called emulsification, and it's the same reason dish soap gets grease off a frying pan in seconds when a plain water rinse does nothing. Now let's get into exactly how I use it, because the ratio and the technique matter as much as the ingredient itself. For cabinets, here's my exact method. Start with warm water, not hot. Hot water can actually soften some finishes and cause streaking, and it evaporates too fast to give the soap time to work. Fill a bowl or small bucket with about 2 cups of warm water. Add 1 teaspoon of dish soap. That's it. You are not making a bubble bath. A lot of people think more soap means more cleaning power, but too much soap leaves a residue on the wood that actually attracts more dust once it dries, which just creates a new version of the same problem. 1 teaspoon per 2 cups of water is the ratio I've used my entire career, and it's strong enough to cut grease without leaving film behind. Dip a microfiber cloth into the solution and wring it out well. You want it damp, not dripping. This matters more than people think. Excess water sitting on wood cabinets, especially around the edges and seams, can seep in and cause swelling or warping over time. A well-wrung cloth gives you enough moisture to activate the soap without soaking the wood. Wipe in the direction of the wood grain, not in circles. I know circular scrubbing feels more thorough, but going with the grain does 2 things. It works the solution into the grain lines where grease tends to collect, and it prevents you from creating swirl marks on the finish, especially on satin or matte finishes where circular wiping can leave visible patterns once the light hits. For heavier buildup, and you'll know it's heavy if the cloth is picking up a yellowish or brownish residue, let the solution sit on the surface for about 30 seconds before wiping. This gives the soap time to break down the bond between the grease and the finish, instead of you having to physically force it off with pressure. Patience does more work here than scrubbing baths. After wiping, and this step gets skipped constantly, go over the cabinet again with a second cloth that's damp with plain water only, no soap. This rinses away any soap residue left behind. If you skip this step, the soap film can dry slightly tacky, which ironically attracts new dust and grease faster than before. This is the step that separates a cabinet that stays clean for months from one that looks dirty again in 2 weeks. Finally, dry the cabinet immediately with a clean, dry microfiber cloth. Don't let it air dry. Standing water, even a small amount sitting on wood finish for extended periods, is one of the fastest ways to dull it or create water spots. 30 seconds of drying at the end saves you from that. For the cabinets right next to your stove, where buildup is usually worst, you may need to repeat this whole process 2 or 3 times in one session. That's normal. I don't recommend trying to force a heavy, months-old buildup off in one pass with more pressure. That's how people scratch finishes. Multiple gentle passes beat one aggressive one every time. Now let's talk about floors, because the technique changes. Wood floors need less water than cabinets, not more, because you're dealing with a much larger surface area, and any excess moisture has more opportunity to seep into seams between boards. My ratio here is 1 teaspoon of dish soap to about a gallon of warm water, much more diluted than the cabinet mixture, because you're going to be covering a lot more ground and you don't want the solution too concentrated. Use a microfiber mop, not a string mop or a sponge mop. Microfiber picks up grease and grime and holds onto it, where a string mop tends to just push dirty water around and redistribute the grease instead of lifting it away. Dip the mop, wring it out so it's damp rather than wet, and mop in the direction of the floorboards, the same principle as the cabinets. For the areas with the heaviest grease, usually right in front of the stove and the path leading out of the kitchen, go over that specific section a second time before moving to the rest of the floor. Spot treating the worst areas first, then doing a full pass over everything gives you a more even result than trying to deep clean the whole floor with one single pass. Just like with cabinets, follow up with a plain water pass to rinse away soap residue, then dry the floor with a clean towel or a microfiber mop. On floors, this drying step is even more important than on cabinets, because a wet floor left to air dry is genuinely risky. Warping, cupping, and dulled finish all come from moisture sitting too long, and a floor takes much longer to naturally air dry than a cabinet door does, simply because of the surface area and the fact that it's horizontal, so water pools instead of running off. One thing I want to mention, because I get asked this constantly: how often should you actually do this? For cabinets near the stove, I recommend this full method about once a month if you cook frequently, and a quick wipe down with just a damp cloth weekly to prevent heavy buildup from forming in the first place. For floors, once every 2 to 3 weeks in the kitchen area is usually enough to stay ahead of grease before it sets in, assuming you're doing regular sweeping or vacuuming in between. I also want to address something people ask about using this method on cabinets with a very old or already worn finish. If your cabinets are decades old and the finish is already compromised, cracked, or peeling in places, test this solution on a small hidden spot first, like the inside edge of a door. In the vast majority of cases, this diluted soap mixture is gentle enough for any finish, but it's always smart to check on an inconspicuous area before going over the whole cabinet, especially if you're not sure what finish was originally used. The reason this method works better than most products you'll find in a store is simple. You're using an ingredient built specifically to break down oil at a strength that's effective without being harsh, applied with a technique that respects the wood instead of fighting it. That's the whole formula. No 16-step process, no specialty tools, no expensive bottles with names that sound like they belong in a lab. Just dish soap, water, the right ratio, and a method that's been passed down and tested for 3 generations in real homes, real kitchens, doing real work. That's the full method, the one my family has used for years to keep wood cabinets and floors clean without damaging the finish or wasting money on products that don't actually cut grease. $2, a bit of technique, and a little patience gets you a result most people pay a cleaning service for. If this helped you, subscribe to the channel. I put out videos like this every week showing you exactly what works based on real experience, not guesswork. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me your biggest cleaning problem right now, the one that's been driving you crazy. I read every comment, and a lot of my future videos come directly from what you tell me you're struggling with. If you're dealing with buildup in other parts of your kitchen, check out the video on my channel about removing hard water stains from stainless steel sinks. It uses a similar approach: one simple ingredient, the right technique, and a real explanation of why it works. You'll find it linked right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.